Welcome, League members and guests. I am Bonnie McNeil, Voter Services Chair for the League of Women Voters of Deerfield, Lincolnshire area. Welcome to the 18th District of the Lake County Board Candidate Forum. Our program is being held through the Zoom platform and is being recorded. The forum will be posted in its entirety on our host League social media platforms and the Illinois Voter Guide. The League claims copyright ownership of any recording or transcript produced of the forum. Any other use of the forum recording requires the express written permission of the League. League of Women Voters is a 104-year-old organization that is proudly nonpartisan. We encourage informed and active participation in government, work to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influence public policy through education and advocacy. We stand firm in our commitment to empower voters and defend democracy. Our commitment to these principles is honored through the sponsorship of programs such as this forum, the creation of the Illinois Voters Guide, a nonpartisan compilation of candidates in all Illinois races, and in our support for voter registration and education programs throughout the year. Today's forum is sponsored by the Leagues of Women Voter of Deerfield, Lincolnshire area and Lake County. I would now like to introduce our moderator, Jane Ruby, who will explain the guidelines for today's forum and introduce the candidates. It should be noted that under League rules, the moderator may not reside within the election district of the candidates participating in the forum. Jane has been involved in the League of Women Voters since 2016 and has had leadership level roles since 2018, becoming the president of the League of Women Voters of Chicago in 2022. And is a trained League of Women Voters moderator. Thank you, Jane, for being with us today.
Thank you so much to both leagues and to the county for inviting me to come and moderate this. So just to kind of go over the ground rules, both candidates before the forum were given the ground rules and they had to sign them and submit them back to the league for participation in this forum. A few sort of housekeeping on how this will go for all of the people watching this. Time will be kept and the timer will be visible to both the moderator and the candidates. When allotted time has expired, the candidates are allowed to finish a short sentence before we will move on to the next question. We will have the candidates answer questions in ballot order, and then we will alternate that for every question. The questions were prepared ahead of time by the League of Women Voters and also submitted by constituents in advance of this forum. These questions were sorted for duplication and possibly rewritten to be able to be asked of all the candidates if necessary. The League reserved the right to review these and select the questions for appropriateness and to avoid duplication. One question will be presented to each candidate who will have 1.5 minutes, so 90 seconds total, to respond to these questions. Subsequent questions will be addressed in a rotation, which will be the ballot order and then alternating. And that will guarantee that there is an equal number of questions asked of each candidate. Candidates may not address other candidates. They must answer questions posed by the moderator, to the moderator, and to the audience. Personal attacks and rude or crude language will not be allowed. Following the time allotted for questions, candidates will be making closing statements of 1.5 minutes or 90 seconds. And for the candidates, no campaign paraphernalia, buttons, backgrounds, banners are going to be permitted on screen. And with that, we will turn it over to the candidates and we will get started. So I would like to introduce our two candidates for Lake County Board District 18. Okay, we have both on screen. Oh, there you go, Sarah. You're a little ghostly in the Zoom screen. So I would like to introduce, and just for those of you who are watching, the order on the screen might be different based on your screens. It is just the way that Zoom handles it. So we have also labeled the names of who's on screen right now, including our timer, also is our Zoom names, just so people are clear on that. But I would like to present our two candidates. We have Alex Sofronas, who is our Republican candidate, and we have Sara Frederick Knizhnik, who is our incumbent Democratic candidate for Lake County Board District 18. So thank you to you both. And timer, are we ready to get started? Based on ballot order that was discussed previously, we are going to start with Alex. We'll answer the first question. So Alex, what is the current most important issue for the
opening statements?
Opening statements. Right. Sorry about that. So Alex, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you, Jane. Before we start, I'd like to ask us all to take a moment to commemorate those who were slaughtered 1 year ago today in the tragic attack on October 7th of last year in Israel. Thank you. And thank you, Jane, for this amazing opportunity. And to the League of Women Voters, this is such an important part of the political process, the debate and the exchange of ideas. And I hope that's what the audience leaves with today. So I'm Alex Sofronas. I'm a proud District 18 native. I spent the last decade in the marketing and analytics industry. I also host a podcast about marketing analytics, and I recently got engaged. So this is a really fun time in my life. I'm running because we need leadership that reflects our community's needs and not an outsider's agenda. Our county board is imbalanced, with 14 Democrats and only 5 Republicans, leading to wasteful spending and ineffective policies. I bring a business-minded approach, focusing on results and accountability. By cutting waste and improving infrastructure, we can boost business and ensure responsible spending. I believe in fiscal responsibility, real solutions, and making sure every tax dollar is spent wisely. Your vote can bring balance to the board and create a brighter future for Lake County. Thank you.
All right, timekeeper. And Sara, you're up for your opening.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Mr. Sofronas, for mentioning the 1-year anniversary of the tragedy in Israel. I am not Jewish myself, but my husband is, and we have many family members who've been directly and indirectly impacted by that tragedy. So it means a great deal to me that you thought to mention it. Thank you very much. My name is Sara Knizhnik, and I am your Lake County board member if you live in District 18. Before serving on the Lake County board, I served as Vernon Township trustee. Before that, for about 8 years, continuing into the present. I have been a professional gun violence prevention and criminal justice reform advocate, working at all 3 levels of government, local, state, and federal, in order to build support and pass several gun safety initiatives, including what became the first gun safety bill passed at the federal level in 30 years, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which passed in July 2022. Before that, I was a teacher for 17 years. I was an English teacher and was motivated to make a profound career change in 2017 because, like many people, I looked around and was worried about the threat of school shootings in my community. And what that experience led to was years of activity, of successes and heartbreaks that taught me that it's so important to get involved in local government, either as an elected official or as just a resident, because that is the only way we can secure the future we hope for our children and grandchildren.
Thank you, Sara. All right. Well, those were the opening remarks, and we will go ahead and get started in the questions. So first up, Sara, what is the current most important issue for the Lake County Board to address?
In my opinion, the current most important issue is to focus on the staff shortages that we're experiencing, what we have seen as a result of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the fact that for the last 4 out of the last 5 years, the Lake County Board has held the tax levy flat. And you add in the inflationary pressures, what we are seeing is huge labor shortages at the county, particularly in the departments of that involve law enforcement. So the sheriff's office and the jail are seeing shortages of up to 30%. The state's attorney's office is also seeing major shortages. And it's more important than ever that we make sure that the professionals who make our county work and through their hard work and expertise have created what I consider to be the best county in the country. Those services don't come without people, talented people to provide them. And what I am determined to do is follow the recommendations of the compensation study that we've had conducted in the last year and make sure that the people of Lake County are safe, because our law enforcement agencies are fully staffed and funded.
Thank you. And Alex?
Thank you, Jane. I think that, well, I'm curious what Sara means by the best county in the country. 95% of counties in the United States are safer than Lake County. This is terrifying. You know, this is something that we need to address immediately. And of course, Sara mentioned the symptom of the problem. The symptom is we don't have enough police officers. We don't have enough people working at the county level. But ask yourself why. What happened 3 years ago? There was riots. There was BLM. There was anti-police rhetoric. And we can't forget that. We can't forget that these officers were ridiculed and embarrassed and forced out. And that's wrong. And I strongly stand with our law enforcement, and I support, just like Sara does, boosting law enforcement. However, we need to get at the core of the problem, and that's economic opportunity, that's job creation. We need to foster better trust between police and residents and attack the solution at the root of the problem. It's not a lack of finding the people. We're causing the problems, and we need to solve it at the individual resident level, empower the residents, improve their lives, and then we will have lower crime and won't need as many officers. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alex, you will be answering the next question. To kind of go along with that first question, what are some of the major issues that you see for the Forest Preserve?
Sure.
You can get started.
So the Forest Preserve deals with the environment, and right now the county board is just focused on the wrong things. They're focused on things like bird-friendly windows and other green initiatives, but they ignore the environmental and human exploitation tied to green solutions, like lithium mining for electric vehicles, which results in widespread pollution and labor abuse, including child slavery, which is used to mine lithium. So ask yourself in the audience, you have somebody here who advocates for bird-friendly windows, but turns a blind eye to environmental destruction caused by lithium mining and other so-called green solutions. So ask yourself, can you really justify these green solutions while ignoring the harm these initiatives cause to the environment and to human rights? Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Sara, what are some of the problems that or the major issues you see with the forest preserves?
I will answer that in just a moment. I'd like to first thank Alex Sofronas for mentioning the need to address root causes of violence and crime in Lake County, because that is an effort that I've been working on since years before I was elected to the county board. I was the instigator of the Gun Violence Prevention Initiative, the purpose of which is to build out an ecosystem of support to address those very root causes and strengthen the individuals, families, and communities that Mr. Sofronas has asked us to do. That effort is already underway, and homicides by firearm are down 40% in Lake County in 2024 over 2023, and that is a direct result of the Gun Violence Prevention Initiative and the Lake County Peacemakers, which I worked for over 8 years to put in place, and I'm continuing to fund. As for the Forest Preserve, I'm so glad you asked that question, because what I consider the greatest problem facing the Forest Preserve is the fact that today they are still 30% understaffed as compared to the way they were staffed in 2008 before the Great Recession. There is a state law that makes it illegal for us to pass or request a referendum in order to address the need for operations. So for 16 years, the Lake County Board staff has been doing more with less. And sooner or later, we're going to have to either find a way to pay more staff members, or we're going to have to agree to give up services. I would prefer the former.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And this kind of next question sort of touches on a little bit about what you both mentioned in your previous answers, but I think is a good follow-up. And we will go ahead and start with Sarah answering that. Should you be elected in your role as a Lake County Forest Preserve Commissioner, sorry, that was a previous question. How can residents be assured that the dual roles played by the county board director and the Forest Preserve commissioners do not create a conflict of interest? And we'll go ahead and start with you, Sarah.
Well, I've served in both roles for almost 2 years now, and I've never seen an example of how there could be a conflict of interest. I think that is due in large part to the professionalism of both the county board staff and the Lake County Forest Preserve board staff. We have very clear separate procedures. We have different leadership. We sit on different committees depending on which board we're active on at any given moment or hour or day. I feel completely unconcerned about that issue. Perhaps the people who thought of this question were thinking of the fact that maybe on the county side, we might have some concerns regarding business, or on the Forest Preserve, we might prioritize things like green solutions that some business owners might feel are not supportive to what they're trying to achieve. But, I would say that's the job of any elected official, is to balance competing needs and think about what are the best ways to consider all the underlying causes and the downstream effects of whatever decision we may or may not make, and make the best possible decision, first and foremost, for the residents of our districts, and then second, for the county as a whole.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Alex, do you want me to repeat the question, or are you okay?
Oh, no, that's fine. Thank you, Jane. So I'm extremely concerned about an interaction between the Forest Preserve and the Lake County board. And, the reason is simple. The long-term goal, and you may not hear this, but mark my words, that the long-term goal of the Lake County board is inching closer and closer to what's called home rule. Home rule allows the Lake County board to expand its powers and increase taxes. This has direct effects on the Forest Preserve Board. The Forest Preserve Board wants to establish a referendum in order to raise millions of dollars in taxpayer funds as a loan in order to spend on the forest preserves. I mean, this sounds great, right? But the problem is that it's essentially a way for the Lake County Board to get the residents to vote to increase their own taxes. I'm strongly against this and believe that we should have smarter budget allocation, and we should use what's called zero-based budgeting, which is not a thing you see in academia. It's something you see in the business world where I come from, where you think of how much money you need that year from scratch, from zero. It's not how much did we spend last year and then this year and let's spend the full budget. It's just how much do we need for this year starting from zero. And this has the ability to lower our budget every year by at least 2 to 3%, just looking at zero-based budgeting as the start. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. For this next question, Alex, we are going to start with you. So to kind of continue our discussion of the Lake County Forest Preserves, Alex, if you were to be elected as a Lake County Forest Preserve Commissioner, what is your position on the proposed transfer of ownership of 50 acres of the Waukegan Savanna to the Waukegan Airport?
I'm so glad you asked that, Jane. Now, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a big fan of business, and I'm certainly not one to stand in the way, but we have to do it in a smart way. I support the Waukegan Airport expansion, but it must be done through public-private partnership. And for those who don't know, this gives entrepreneurs a chance to invest in the infrastructure in Lake County without the county board using tax dollars for the project. It's a really beautiful thing, how the public and private sector can work together. But we can do even better than that. We should ensure strict environmental protections, and we should ensure there's at least a 5-to-1 wetland restoration ratio, which would mitigate any environmental impact caused by the expansion. And with that, all that means is if you're going to displace any of the wetlands, any of the nature, make sure you are going somewhere else in the county and restoring 5, 10, even 10 times more than what you're replacing. And we've seen this work in the past, and this is such a beautiful way to increase our economic output and value, increase our wealth as a county, and also improve the nature and the wildlife. The birds are very happy when you increase the wetlands and you give them more places to have their home.
Thank you, Alex. Sarah, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes,
Or-
please.
So if you're to be reelected in your role as the Lake County Forest Preserve Commissioner, what is your position on the proposed transfer of ownership of 50 acres of the Waukegan Savanna to the Waukegan Airport?
My position is actually not that much different from my opponent's, and the solutions that he suggested. And I love the idea of if we were to sell some of the land that is currently under Lake County Forest Preserve ownership, that we would get much, much more in return. What he may not realize is that all of those ideas are already under consideration, and we've been discussing them for years, over a decade, as a matter of fact. And so my position is that I intend to wait for the rest of the information to come out. I intend to wait to see what, if we were to sell any of the land, what we could get in return. And I think Mr. Sofronas's ideas are great because they are the very ideas that I and my colleagues have been discussing for the last couple of years. So, it's really great that we're on the same page about that. But what Mr. Sofronas and a lot of people listening may not realize is that we're all in a holding pattern right now. The members of the Lake County Board, including myself, had the option of reading a 1,000-page preliminary environmental assessment impact assessment report about a year ago. We were allowed to make recommendations for how we could, through this project, protect our green spaces. We sent it to the FAA, and we have been waiting for almost a year for the FAA to respond with their changes and the draft, so not the preliminary, but the draft. Until that happens, we don't have enough information to make any final decisions. And as a responsible steward of taxpayer funds, I will be waiting until I have the information to make a final decision.
Great. Thank you so much for both of your answers. We are going to switch subjects for a second, and we are going to start. Sarah, you will answer this question first. What is the role of the board in providing mental health assistance for the residents of the county? The role of the board in providing mental health assistance is to provide it wherever it is needed.
By provide, I mean the board provides that assistance indirectly because we fund the Lake County Health Department, which does an outstanding job. They will literally, if you reach out to them, they will literally send behavioral health specialists to your home, no matter where you live in Lake County, in order to find out what kind of needs you have and how best to meet them. If, unfortunately, as often happens, people who are experiencing a mental health episode, sometimes the police get involved, in most cases, not because that person has committed a crime or because they have done anything violent, but because of the fact that because of the fact that in our society, we have expected police officers to be first responders for every problem. We call 911, even if it's not a crime involved. We don't know who else to call in some cases, especially if we're under duress, because maybe a loved one is experiencing a crisis. So I'm sharing that background information because another very important role, which is part of ensuring the public safety, is the county board, through our support for the sheriff's office and its COAST program. We are funding and providing a way for police officers to determine at the point of connection, after a 911 call has been made, if there's no need for an arrest, they will take that person who is experiencing a crisis directly to the Living Room Wellness Center, which we also fund. That allows them to avoid being jailed when maybe there is no need.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Alex, you are up.
Thank you, Jane. So what Sarah's describing is called after the fact intervention. So this is waiting until the problem gets so bad that the police need to be called. I strongly advocate for preventative measures in order to improve mental health and overall health before things get to a crisis situation. We absolutely need to address mental health, but the current programs, they aren't working. Despite increased funding, mental health crises are still rising. We need a smarter approach, more focus on community-based solutions, economic stability, and strengthening families. Addressing the root cause of gun violence and other mental health crises means improving education, creating jobs, fostering economic activities, and not just relying on crisis intervention after the fact. A huge part of my platform is health, and more specifically, women's health. Despite the US spending over $12,000 per year per person on healthcare, the US ranks one of the worst of any developed nation in health outcomes, including in maternal mortality rate. We need to do better. I will advocate for preventative healthcare initiatives focusing on nutrition, prenatal care, reducing environmental stressors, all of which that can be implemented through county health programs.
Great. Thank you, Alex. All right, this next question, Alex, you will be answering it first. As the consolidation of 911 services has progressed, do you have a position on encouraging the Lake County Sheriff's Department in becoming a part of that integration?
I'm so glad you asked that, Jane. I'm strongly against the 911 centralization effort for one simple reason: redundancy. If you understand how we used to structure the 911 operators, they used to be locally operated. Your little town, maybe, I grew up in Killdeer. So Killdeer would have its own little hub where the 911 calls would route to. I'm oversimplifying, but just so that the audience can understand. What this 911 centralization effort has done has said, instead of having little 911 operators in each town, let's have one center connect to everything. That's what we call in the business world a central point of failure. This is not good. I actually got a text on my phone that said the 911 center is down right now. I couldn't believe what I saw. This is our future. With cyber attacks at an increasing rate, we can't allow our 911 calls to be routed to one place that could easily be attacked and deny access to emergency services for everybody in this entire region. So no, respectfully, I do not support a further centralization of the 911 effort, and I would support repealing and reversing the 911 effort in order to make it safer and more redundant for the safety of our citizens. Thank you.
You. Sarah, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. I think I'm ready to respond. I'm struck by the fact that it seems that Mr. Sofronas, I keep thinking maybe he's talking about some other county because everything that he is suggesting, I like to refer back to his previous answer. He talked about how it's so important to address root causes, the need for mental health, for example. If he had made the effort to research the gun violence prevention initiative, what he would find is that is exactly what we are doing, is we're directing the people most in need of mental and behavioral health care services, of educational opportunities, of mental health support, of jobs. We're directing them we're doing soft, hard handoffs. We call them hard handoffs, meaning we're not just giving people a phone number. We're physically taking them in person to the agencies in Lake County that can help them in all of these ways. And as for the 911 consolidation, your facts are a little bit wrong, Mr. Sofronas. Actually, they're a lot wrong because it's not true that Killdeer, for example, has its own 911 center. What it does is it participates in a 911 call system that crosses possibly county lines, definitely different township lines. Right now, what we have is over 12 different 911 centers, all trying to respond to calls within Lake County. And some of those centers are in Cook County, in McHenry, partly in McHenry and Cook and Lake. And so what you do is if you call 911 today, what you often have is there are 5 or 6 or even 10 transfers before the first responder is aware of your call. That is exactly the kind of redundancy and inefficiency that we are going to put an end to with the new Rock facility.
Great, thank you. We are going to start this next round of questions, and Sarah will begin first. How should the board work to alleviate the growing need for affordable housing?
So this is an issue that is of really great concern to me because what I have learned in my 8 years of advocacy is that none of us lives in a bubble. And this idea that we can isolate ourselves within our own communities and not be impacted by the troubles and challenges that people in neighboring communities face is a fantasy. It's a fantasy that people on the political right have been trying to sell us for 20 years, and it simply doesn't work. So for example, there was an effort to pass, there was an effort to support the creation, or excuse me, the sale of a property on the border between Gurnee and Grays Lake earlier this fall. And the Lake County Board had approved all of the pieces that need to go in place for PADS, the homeless shelter in Lake County, to purchase this property and finally have a standing permanent structure to put unhoused people in. Because we live in a county, we're not Cook County, we're Lake County. What that means is there are many different jurisdictions around the county and they all have a say. So before the county can really be involved in helping to address the outrageous increase in unhoused people in Lake County, these projects need to be signed off on by some of the villages and municipalities. The city of Gurnee decided that they did not want this project to go forward. And so those are the kinds of problems that are standing in our way, but we will, at the county, will keep doing everything in our power to find solutions.
Thank you, Sarah. Alex?
Jane, you're talking about infrastructure, and this is one of my favorite topics. It's such an important piece of what we do on the Lake County Board. We need to shift away from spending money on things like bird-friendly windows, which Sarah was a loud proponent for, and they can cost up to $50 a square foot. Lake County should focus on practical infrastructure improvements, things that reduce traffic congestion and boost local businesses. It's not about, do we build more housing or not? It's, are we focusing on the right infrastructure improvements that actually benefit the taxpayers in our county? And I would argue that we're not doing that because we're focusing on things like these bird-friendly windows, which will continue to be a cost to our taxpayers in perpetuity. As the windows break, they will be replaced, and these are very expensive windows. So as a board member, I can vote to prioritize infrastructure projects, ensure funds are directed towards road maintenance, public transportation, and traffic reduction in business districts like Vernon Hills and Buffalo Grove. I will also push to cut wasteful spending on projects that don't directly benefit the public. Thank you.
Great. For this next question, we will start with Alex. As the country seems to be moving in the direction of electric vehicles, what would you recommend the board do to improve electrical energy infrastructure in the county? One example of that in the question would be something like charging stations.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, there is such a big focus on these green solutions, by the county board. And as a humanitarian, as somebody who genuinely cares about people and cares about reducing child slavery worldwide, I do strongly stand against this, frankly, crazy move to these extremely expensive EV charging stations and battery-powered buses and so forth. These are vanity improvements. They seem good, but they destroy our roads because they're so heavy. They have so many carbon and other toxic emissions. And this is basically a lie. They are selling you a lie. They're telling you that it's green, but it's actually harming the earth even more than burning clean coal and oil. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Would you like me to repeat the question? It was kind of a long one, or are you?
Yes, please.
Okay. As the country seems to be moving in the direction of electric vehicles, what would you recommend the board do to improve electrical energy infrastructure in the county? And one example in the question would be something like charging stations.
Well, I couldn't disagree more strongly with Mr. Sofronas in his response to this question, because everything is connected and protecting the environment is a pragmatic infrastructure solution. Because if our environment is not healthy, we are not healthy, and I will always prioritize public health. I couldn't disagree more that bird-friendly buildings are an unnecessary expense, because Lake County sits in a major travel zone for many different important species of birds, and they are part of our environment. They are part of the ecosystem that we are responsible for, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it will make us and our children and our grandchildren safer and healthier as we see rising impacts from climate change. What I would like to see is continued focus on replacing all fossil fueled vehicles owned by the county with electric vehicles. I would like to see a concerted effort to use state and federal funds, not taxpayer funds from Lake County, in order to take advantage of many opportunities to increase our grid of electric charging stations. And I couldn't be prouder of the fact that the Lake County Board has prioritized making sure that all new buildings that the county builds are net zero. The Lake County Forest Preserve has led the way in this effort, and they've shown us how it can be done affordably in a way that will make us all healthier and safer in the years to come.
Great.
Well, healthier and safer, excluding the child slaves that mined the lithium for.
Alex, I need to cut you off. Sorry, we are not cross answering. All right, the next question. So Sarah, you will get us started on the next one. Earlier this year, several communities in Lake County had a boil advisory following a water main break. What action should the Lake County Board do to ensure safe drinking water throughout the county?
So the Lake County Board can have a direct impact on this issue for anyone living in unincorporated areas. When it comes to people living in incorporated areas, that is in villages, then the Lake County Board stands ready to work in any possible way we can with those village officials in order to secure all public utilities, including the water supply, for the people in their communities. When it comes to those who live in unincorporated communities, and there are several in Lake County, I am thrilled to say that we are well on the way to securing Lake Michigan water for the communities of Forest Lake and some other areas near in the Hawthorne Woods Lake Zurich community. A plan is already underway to make them no longer dependent on Aqua for their water. I think the failure of Aqua to provide the most necessary resource that we need in order simply to make it through the day, there is nothing more crucial than a clean, reliable water supply. And Aqua's failure to provide that, their business practices have resulted in an incredible amount of distrust. They've lost a great deal of credibility with their customers, and the sooner we can move people in the unincorporated areas off of Aqua water, the better.
Thank you, Sarah. Alex, would you like me to repeat the question? It was kind of a lengthy one.
Sure, that would be great. Thank you, Jane.
No worries. Earlier this year, several communities in Lake County had a boil advisory following a water main break. What action should the Lake County Board do to ensure safe drinking water throughout the county?
Thank you, Jane. Well, the first thing I would do is look at where are we spending money where we shouldn't be, right? Where can the money come from to improve our infrastructure? Because this is an infrastructure problem. It could also be solved by a public-private partnership. Now, unfortunately, we do have to supply water to all the homes. I wish all the homes had a well, like my home in Killdeer, because that's how you get really the best quality water, and you're not dependent on the government. And of course, I'm against being dependent on the government as much as you can. And so for those that can't have a well for one reason or another, I believe we need to increase our infrastructure investment in water delivery and take money away from things like bird-friendly windows and diversity and inclusion programs, which don't have tangible results. Clean water is a tangible result. We know when we have clean water, and I strongly support providing that for our people. And we're not spending money on it because we're spending money on vanity projects that Sarah's very proud of, but unfortunately, we have serious issues at home, like the water issue that you talked about, that need the money first.
All right, thank you to you both for answering the question. We are going to shift gears a little bit and talk more about board transparency. And we are going to start with you, Alex. How would you plan to work across the aisle and try to create more opportunities for consensus rather than deciding matters along party lines?
It's funny you mentioned that, Jane. There is no consensus across party lines. There's only democratic consensus on the board because, of course, there's a super majority of Democrats on the board. So the way to fix that is actually in the voters' hands. It's not in ours. It's by electing more Republican candidates to make the conversation a more fair fight, so that we can actually do what's in the best interest of the people with a diversity of opinions. Right now, we don't have any diversity of opinions on the Lake County Board. So it's actually the voters at home that can make that change for us. But there's other things that I would also improve for the county board, like we stopped using the committee of the whole in 2020 following COVID, and that has limited the full board discussions. And that reduced transparency and collaboration. So I would advocate strongly for reinstating the committee of the whole. And that gives us a chance to bring all the board members together to thoroughly discuss important issues and would lead to better informed decisions and more efficient use of meeting time. And Sarah, I could see you're going to correct me, so please go ahead.
All right, Sarah, did you want me to repeat the question or?
No, that's okay. Mr. Sofronas filed his candidacy almost 10 months ago. He's had plenty of time to investigate and learn the facts about how the county board works and how it doesn't work. He has just made many misstatements. There are many inaccuracies I would like to point out. First and foremost, Aqua Illinois, Mr. Sofronas, is a public-private partnership, which I am all for in theory, just not when that partnership is tasked with providing the single most important resource we need to survive and keep ourselves clean and healthy. And second, we do have committee of the whole meetings. I've attended every single one since I was elected in 2022. So you are incorrect about that. And third, there is bipartisan agreement often on the county board. I will love to give you an example. In April of 2023, I put forth a resolution urging the Illinois General Assembly to pass a safe firearm storage law. I expected, to be perfectly honest, I expected pushback from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, both in committee and during the full board meeting. I got absolutely no pushback whatsoever, none. They were in full agreement, and we voted unanimously with all 19 members of the Lake County Board calling on the General Assembly to pass a safe storage law. Because my colleagues who are gun owners and Republicans on the county board believe, as I do, that it is important to be responsible with our guns.
Thank you, Sarah. The next question, Sarah, you will start with the answers. This one's a bit of a long question, so just bear with me.
And this would be the last question before closing.
Great. Most of this discussion of issues before the Lake County Board occurs in the various board committees, of which, if elected, you would be a member of. The Committee of the Whole rarely meets anymore, where discussion of the agenda used to be discussed by the entire board in advance of the regular board meeting. Concern over transparency has been expressed by the public. Do you have any proposals to encourage more discussion at the regular board meeting, or do you think that this is not a concern?
Well, Jane, you must have your facts wrong according to Sarah, but I'm going to take you at your word.
Oh, this question is actually for Sarah to answer first.
So can I just clarify, are you asking whether we think there should be more opportunity for discussion at the full board?
Yes.
At
So
the full board meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, there were several parts to the question. Would you mind reading it again? I just really want to be sure to answer it in full.
Yeah, so most of the discussion of issues before the Lake County Board occurs in the various board committees, which you would be a member of if elected. And then there's the Committee of the Whole, which, according to the question, does not meet as frequently as it used to. Where discussion of the agenda used to be discussed by the entire board in advance of the regular board meeting. This has led to concern over transparency by the public. Do you have any proposals to encourage more discussion at the regular board meeting, or do you think like the current way that it is being handled, where discussion of issues are happening in the various committees, is a better system?
Well, I think that it would be better if we had more committees of the whole. I would like to see them meet every month. However, the perhaps 2 or 3 times a year that we've had committees of the whole meet in the 2 years that I've been on the board, there are several board members that choose not to attend. It would be helpful if everyone attended the committees of the whole. I've attended them all, but some board members, perhaps for reasons they can't control, such as their jobs, they don't always attend. As for the second part of your question, I don't really see a problem with having the bulk of the discussion happen during committees. In fact, I feel like committee work is the primary responsibility. Not that the full county board meeting is less important, but the committee meetings is when we do the bulk of our work, and they are public. Anyone can sign in and watch at any time. They are recorded. We've increased transparency for all of our committee and board meetings, including committees of the whole. We've recently completely redesigned the technology package that we use in order to present these meetings to the public. It used to be that the recordings of the meetings were pretty hard to follow. You kind of had to watch the entire meeting in order to find out what you were interested in, but now they are carefully indexed with clear explanations on the screen of what you're hearing about. So my proposal is that all colleagues make their best possible efforts to come to all the meetings and fully discuss issues to the best of their ability.
Thank you, Sarah. Alex, would you like me to repeat the question, or are you?
No, that's all right, Jane. Thank you. So I believe the board should increase its responsiveness to public comments. Right now, the feedback is often noted, but not followed up on. I would implement a structured process where every comment receives a formal response, improving accountability and fostering stronger communication between the board and the community. I also would be a strong advocate for creating a taxpayer advisory board. It's comprised of taxpayers, and they review all county budgets, ensuring that local residents have a voice in how their money is spent. Thank you.
All right, thank you to you both. So we are done with sort of the community and league question portion of this, and you will each have 90 seconds, so a minute and a half for your closing remarks. We're going to change it up a little bit just because Alex had opened. So Sarah, you will go ahead and get us started with the closing remarks.
Okay, thank you. Well, I really want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. One of the values that I hold most dear is, in a democratic system, the most important thing that we need to do as citizens is show up and be engaged. And what I have learned over my nearly 9 years in advocacy is that when we do show up, we can make change in the communities that we live in and in our state, and the downstream effects have a collective impact nationwide. I believe deeply in that, and that is why I chose to run for elected office in the first place. I actually prefer being involved at the local level for many reasons. Number one, because it's at the local level where I, together with my constituents, by listening to them, hearing about their problems and actually meeting up with them face to face, together we can solve the issues in their communities that are preventing them from living their lives to the fullest. And the other reason I really enjoy serving at the local level is because a lot of the sort of ugliness of politics in our current age just doesn't apply in Lake County. I couldn't be prouder of all of my colleagues on the Lake County board and the way everyone treats each other with a great deal of respect. The professionalism of the board is something, my colleagues on the board is something I strive every day to match. And I just really want everyone to know that it is a joy to serve as your Lake County board member. And I would love to hear from each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, Alex, you have 90 seconds for your closing remark.
Thank you, Jane. And thank you to the League of Women Voters and everybody watching tonight for the opportunity to speak here. Lake County is at a critical juncture. We can continue down the path of reckless spending and misguided priorities, or we can choose a new direction. One that values fiscal responsibility, strong infrastructure, and public safety. My opponent supports policies like bird-friendly windows and green initiatives that waste taxpayer money while crime continues to rise, total crime continues to rise, and businesses struggle under the weight of unnecessary taxes. Lake County is in the 5th percentile of safety, meaning 95% of counties in the United States are safer than Lake County. That's unacceptable. It's time we invest in our police, our infrastructure, and our communities. We need to cut waste, restore balance to the county board, and make sure every tax dollar is spent wisely. I grew up in this district. I know what's at stake, and I have the business experience to ensure our county is run efficiently. Your vote can make a difference in the future of District 18. Together, we can bring common sense back to Lake County and make it a place where families thrive, businesses grow, and the government is accountable. Thank you.
Great. And with that, this concludes our Lake County District 8 candidate forum. Thank you so much to both of the candidates for agreeing to participate in this forum. It is incredibly important for the viewers to sort of really be able to hear from all the candidates up and down their ballot on important issues for their communities. So thank you to both of you, and I will turn it back over to our League of Women Voters.
Thank you very much for attending. This has been a forum was presented again by the League of Women Voters, and we hope you will join us for other forums that are held throughout the year. Thank you very much.